Hey Bill, how you doing?
I'm doing well, George, and yourself?
No complaints. So listen, I wanted to check in with you on a couple of things because the whole thing going on with Russia and Ukraine and all that, the cost of
Yeah,
heating oil. I mean, we had that whole conversation, which led to the conversation regarding tanks, actually,
yeah, yep,
because the whole thing with underground oil tanks. But you brought up a good point about the fact that there are really three different types of underground systems that have to be accounted for, both as a consumer but also as a lender.
yeah. So the three things that you think about when you're going to look at a home, and well, maybe you don't think about it because it's underground, but it's
Mhm.
the water, the waste, and the oil tanks,
Right.
right? Or just general underground storage tanks. And you were talking a little about what you need to do for the water quality, right? So what are the inspections that go along with that?
Well, I mean, so the first thing is that with any type of home purchase with a well water, you're not required to do inspection of the home, but I think there are certain loan types where you're required to at least get a bacteria inspection on the water. So we always recommend a well water test anyway, just for, like through, refill rate and stuff like that. We want to make sure that's there, but we want the water quality test. Make sure there's
Yep,
no
yeah.
bacteria in the system.
And you're correct. That is the thing that I care about. So the flow rate, the regeneration rate, not really important to me. I mean, obviously it's important to the client, but as far as the lender's concerned, for our government loan types, we will
Right.
always need that water test. So for conventional loans, we're not going to request it unless the appraiser specifically notes something. But for government loan types, FHA, government, VA,
Right.
we require that water well test.
Yeah, and of course, we're going to recommend inspections anyway, which leads to a recommended inspection on like a septic. So
Yep.
waste systems are different though. Lenders don't really, I don't want to say you don't care, but you don't really care about a waste system.
Correct. Yeah, we don't necessarily care. But with both of these, with water and with waste, for government loans again specifically, we care that whatever system is there is up to the local health
Right.
codes and safety codes for that area. And in some instances, if the public water and sewer is readily accessible, if it's nearby, it's going to actually be required that it's connected depending on cost.
Well, okay, so there's that. And there are towns though that don't even have public water and sewer. So for example, the town of Prospect has no public water sewer. So it's not even
Yeah,
a conversation, but I think it's within when it's within reasonable distance. Like if it's in the main road and you're within like 100, I don't know, but with a short enough distance to the road where it's not
correct.
going to be cost excessive. So
Yeah.
well water and septic systems, right, they have to be brought up to code if they're not, but that would be determined largely through an inspection. So those are two kind of straightforward things. Okay, that brings us to that's those two things. That brings us to oil tanks.
Yes. Yeah. And this one's kind of funky. I mean, you don't run into it often, but I know you were rattling off a few areas because it's not exactly uncommon.
Right. No, it's not
Um,
uncommon. It's not as prevalent as it was before. You just have to remember that tanks were buried for a reason when those houses were built. They don't do that anymore. But I think the issue with an oil tank is more of a problem. Well, it's a problem for anybody if there's obvious signs of deterioration or leakage or anything of that nature. It
yes.
doesn't matter the loan type.
Yes.
But FHA and VA, you cannot purchase a home with an underground tank, right?
Correct. Yeah. And again, this is always kind of dependent on the appraiser's ability to point it out. But if the appraiser notices that there is some signs of an underground oil tank, or if there was a note on the property record in some way that there was an underground oil tank, it's got to be taken out or the property is ineligible for that type of financing.
Okay, so people always ask me this question, and I'll keep this very brief. But people always ask the question of, well, what does it take to remove it? What does it take to remove a tank? So there's the removal portion of it, which you have to use a registered contractor. You can't just use Joe's local. You have to use a registered contractor because they have to submit a soil test. So
Yes.
when they pull that out, so they're going to pump out if there's any remaining oil in the tank, they're going to pump that out. When they go to excavate, they have to provide a soil sample to, I think it's Deep has to get a copy of it. Yeah,
Yep.
in Connecticut, it's Deep, and then as long as there's nothing wrong in the soil that's identified, then they don't care. You just backfill it in with dirt, cover it with seed, and grass grows. But if there is an issue, if oil has leaked into the water table, if oil's leaked into the waste system, like a septic system, if it's leaked into the neighbor's
Yeah.
yard, then it becomes a disaster.
Exactly. And that's what the government essentially is trying to avoid is signing on to a disaster like that. Because a lot of times you and I have seen that they are fine, the tanks are fine, they were, filled with sand or whatever you have to do, and there's no seepage. But when there is, it can be a very expensive, very large problem.
So regardless of conventional or FHA or VA, any loan that any house is being purchased, if there's obvious signs of deterioration, that's a no-go anyhow.
Yep.
But for FHA and VA, again, that's not even an option to begin with. Okay.
Correct. Yeah, it's not even a conversation, and it's up to the appraiser to figure this stuff out and point it out as always. But most of them are pretty savvy, and they pick up on the. Actually, speaking about tanks, another interesting one that I had recently. FHA will not allow you to purchase a home within 300 feet of an above ground storage tank of 1,000 gallons or larger of flammable material. So that actually came up for somebody had a gas station that still had an old above ground oil tank. No go for FHA.
Yeah, well, and that's certainly not common, but again, it's not rare.
Correct. Yeah, same thing. When it comes up, sometimes it's a surprise because it's not something you see every day, but it's in the guidelines, and we have to follow the guidelines.
All right. Hey, listen, I got to run. I appreciate the quick update. Hope this was helpful for everybody else as well. Again, water, sewer, or water septic, really not a big deal from a lending type unless it's close enough, it has to be connected. And then oil tanks in general, unless there's deterioration, it's not an issue for conventional. We're always going to recommend you pull it out anyway, but with FHA and VA, it's not even an option. Okay.
Yep. All just stuff you want to be aware of.
Yeah. All right, I'll catch you later. Be good, be safe, and I'm sure we'll be talking about other clients as well.
We will be talking very soon. Take care, George.
I'll catch you.
Bye.